Believe it or not, we're doing something not from a comic book. We also lost the instructions, so we're recording on a wing and a prayer. So what could it be? Believe it or not, on this episode of Moving Panels, we discuss the greatest American hero. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we, usually discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. However, today we are going to do a superhero television show that is not based on a comic because, I wanted to. We're going to be discussing the greatest American hero from the 1980s. I'm your host, Laramy Wells, and joining me today is a guest host who actually could have watched these episodes when they originally aired.
Oh, no, don't say could have, sir. I did watch them when they originally aired.
Yeah, please welcome Reece Fowler. So
Hey.
There you go, Reece.
Thank you, Laramy. Good to be on the show.
Oh, I'm so excited about this. Even though I watched these as reruns, these were loved the show as a kid.
Oh yeah, it was a great show at the time, but as I've gone back and started to rewatch some of these episodes, I'm like, holy cow, how did we put up with that?
Yes, some of it doesn't hold up, and we will definitely be talking about some of that. You know, I will say, though, that, there's a lot of stuff you go back and watch from your childhood, and the nostalgia doesn't hold. Like, you're going, how did I enjoy this?
Right.
This is one that I'll admit, I still enjoy it. Like, even watching it today, I still enjoy it.
It was good. It was good to go back and see some of the things that, like you say, from the childhood that I originally watched when it did air back in the early 80s.
So this show did first air 40 years ago, a little over 40 years ago. It was March 18th of 1981. It aired with a 2-hour pilot, but before we get into anything dealing with this show, we got to talk about the most iconic part of this show, and that's the theme song.
You're right. It's just one of those songs that once you get it in your head, it's really hard to get out. It's funny that we're doing this episode. It was just a couple of nights ago. We were sitting on the couch watching some TV, and this song actually played in the background of another show, and my wife and I just started word for word singing the songs.
Oh, yeah.
It was just, you just can't get rid of it once it's there.
Yeah, I've even heard it in like a commercial recently too, I think.
Maybe that's what it was.
The singer was a guy named Joey Scarberry, and it was written by Mike Post, which, you want to talk about iconic 80s theme songs. Mike Post also wrote the theme song for the A-Team, and he wrote the music that is the theme song for Law and Order.
Oh, wow. Okay. Did not know the Law and Order connection there, but yeah, the A-Team was definitely another one of those 80s iconic theme songs.
Yeah, even though those two don't have lyrics, so they're not ones you really sing along with like this one. But, oh my goodness. I mean, this one, believe it or not, actually reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 back in 1981.
Oh, wow.
That is how big this was.
Oh, yeah. And like I say, you just sing right along with it, and it's like your best song ever.
Let me test your music knowledge. Do you have any idea what was the song that it could not beat? What was the number 1 song that, believe it or not, could not beat?
Oh, well, now, back in 81, now it's probably some poppy song by Debbie Gibson or something.
No, it was actually a very famous duet by 2 very popular singers at the time.
Captain and Tennille?
No. It was Endless Love by Lionel Richie and Diana Ross.
Yeah, well, just that's a sappy song, too.
All right, so we're going to get into this. Let's start talking about it. Debuted in March 18th of 1981. It was a 2-hour pilot. I do miss that about television shows. I love that in the 90s, early 90s and the 80s, that television shows kicked off with like a television movie.
Yeah, it was just a TV movie, and I believe when they did the syndication, they actually split that into 2 one-hour shows, did they not?
Yeah, they did.
But yeah, it was good just to sit down and watch the whole. Let's get all the characters out there. Let's get all of the information that you need to set the stage for the show, all in one episode, be it 2 hours or not. It was good to watch these characters develop in that first TV movie.
Yeah, and making it a TV movie, to me, if you're kicking off a show by doing a TV movie to kick it off, it just makes it feel that much bigger. And so I miss that. I wish they would do more of that.
I think we should run that suggestion up to the powers that be and see if it takes root.
I want them to remake this show, but we'll get into that later.
Oh, yeah.
So this show ran for 3 seasons. The final episode aired February 3rd of 1983. And for those of you not familiar, because I know this is one that there's probably a lot of people who are not familiar with this show. The premise behind this show is that a school teacher is given a super suit from some aliens, which when he wears it, and he's the only person who can wear it, it gives him superpowers. If anyone else tries to wear the suit, it's just a silly looking suit. But if he wears it, he has superpowers. He's paired up with an FBI agent. Unfortunately, he loses the instruction book, and so he is bumbling around trying to figure out how his powers work and whatnot. And that is pretty much the premise of the show. And if you hear that, you go, okay, well, that just sounds stupid.
And it was a little bit hard to understand at the beginning. The more you got into the show, though, I think the whole thing worked. The premise for the show worked for me. Again, it was something we looked forward to every week when it came on. And I was just rolling with it, man. Again, so nostalgic to go back and watch these episodes again.
Yeah, and again, it's silly of a premise as it is, it's amazing. It was a great ensemble show with the 3 leads. It had some heart. It was funny. It had the action. It's just such a great show.
Yeah, at times you couldn't really determine, is this supposed to be a comedy? Is it supposed to be a drama? Is it supposed to be an action? I mean, they did a really good job rolling all 3 of those things together in their episodes. So,
yeah.
And I think at one point, the FBI agent, Bill Maxwell, was actually referred to as the comedic sidekick. Is that, if I remember that correctly?
No, I don't know about that.
I think that's what he was called at one point during the pilot episode. You're just the comedy relief.
Yeah, but if anybody's interested, the show, if you do have a subscription to Peacock, all 3 seasons are on Peacock. If you don't have a subscription to Peacock, you can actually find them on Tubi. And IMDb TV has seasons 1 and 3. I don't know why they don't have season 2. But as of right now, Tubi, Peacock, IMDb TV, all places where you can find this show. I don't usually mention where you can watch the things we talk about, but considering this is one that I do believe very few people know about, I want to put that out there.
Oh yeah, and I watched it definitely through Peacock. It's a free download, and you do have to watch the commercials though, but that's okay to get back through the shows.
Which I will say this, it's funny because, of course, back in, 81, 82, 83, there wasn't as many commercial breaks. And so now on these, they force the commercial break in, and sometimes it's in a really odd spot.
Yeah, I noticed that. I'm like, why are we having a commercial here? But again, that's what you get for the free service. So I'm willing to deal with that.
All right, let's get into the characters. And we're going to start off with the greatest American hero himself, Ralph Hinckley, or Hanley, and I'll get to that in a minute.
I was wondering if you would bring that up.
He was played by William Catt, and fun little tidbit, William Catt was actually up for the role of Luke Skywalker in Star Wars.
Something I did not know.
If you're not familiar with William Catt, you haven't seen him, you're trying to place him, here's a couple of things you might know him from. He was Tommy, Carrie's prom date in the horror movie Carrie.
Right, don't think they left together.
No. I'm also a big fan of another thing he did, which was the horror comedy movie House. Do you remember that one?
You know what? I think I did see that. It's just been so long. It's one of those I would have to go back and but now that you mention it, yeah, I do recall seeing House.
Yeah, with him and George Wendt.
Right.
Little haunted house, and they have to fight off the ghosts.
Yeah.
After he did Greatest American Hero, he played a character named Paul Drake in the Perry Mason TV movies from the 80s.
Okay, right.
This isn't his only connection to comic books. He has been a voice actor on Batman the Animated Series, Justice League, Batman the Brave and the Bold. He's been connected to the comic books, even though Greatest American Hero is not based on one. At least it wasn't based on one, but in 2008, William Katz himself wrote 3 issues of a comic book for the Greatest American Hero.
That is interesting. Again, something that I was not familiar with.
I actually wasn't either until I started doing research for this. And then I tried to look up, can I get a hold of these? I cannot, because they are very rare and very expensive.
So if you've got one, people, hang on to it.
But they took place in modern times. Ralph still kind of, looked the same, but it was taking place in, 2008, 2009. In fact, Barack Obama is actually on the cover of the third issue with Ralph.
Okay.
But there you go. I did find out that William Catt actually hated wearing that suit. I saw an interview where he actually talked about how much he hated wearing the suit.
Yeah, it did look like pajamas.
Yeah, just like this one big, almost like leotard.
Yeah.
But yet it was like a tunic and then some stretchy pants.
Right. It didn't have the top piece and the bottom piece, but yeah, it just looked like he was wearing red pajamas the whole time. And in fact, I think if you watch the show, you will hear them refer to them as the Red Jammies a lot.
Yep, they call them the Red Jammies. All right, so I mentioned earlier that the character, I said Ralph Hinckley or Hanley, and here's that story. So the character is named Ralph Hinckley. The problem was that in March of 1981, the exact same month that the show premiered, John Hinckley Jr. attempted to assassinate President Reagan.
That is correct.
And we won't get into all of that. That's for a different type of podcast. But because the guy who's trying to kill the president was named Hinckley, then they didn't want their greatest American hero to also be named Hinckley.
So yeah, they just tried to disassociate themselves as far as they could from that name.
Well, but what's funny is what they did was they decided to change it to Hanley, and since they had already filmed some episodes, they had to go back in and do some ADR, do some dubbing.
Right.
And whenever anyone was saying Hinckley, they had to overdub it with someone saying Hanley. And then when they were filming new episodes, they of course were using the name Hanley. And they only did that for the first season.
Right.
Once they went to season 2, he was back to Hinckley.
Right, back to Hinckley. I think that enough time had passed that people had forgotten about the whole John Hinckley Jr. thing. So, and again, to get back with those people who were from the beginning watching the original pilot episodes, it could have been a little confusing to those folks. Again, it was so long ago for me, I just don't remember the change. But going back and researching, like you said, yeah, there was that little overdub with his name there. It was kind of funny.
Yeah. So I want to get into something about this character. For people who listen to the show, they probably know that I'm a teacher. Well, Reece is a teacher as well. And
go teachers.
And as I said earlier, Ralph is a teacher in the show. What were your thoughts about
the special ed class?
One, I was very interested with the fact that they were calling it a special ed class. But two, the reality. I mean, I know this was 1981, but still, the reality of how he handles this class and how his relationships with these students.
It was very interesting because, for one, that's not a true special ed class. That was a class of delinquents mostly. These were the kids that nobody could handle. Nobody wanted to deal with their behavior and their lack of work ethic, so they just stuck them all into this one class and told Ralph, have at it, do your best. And then, like you say, the relationship with them started out a little rocky. He walks in, they wanted to call him Mr. H. He's like, no, I'm Mr. Hinckley. But it kind of evolved. He did develop a relationship with those characters, with those kids in his class. And in some of the episodes, they were able to go on and do some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of the trips that they go on. So,
well, again, in the first episode, he's taking them on what appears to be an overnighter to some place to do some geological research.
Yeah, what exactly does he teach? That's the other thing.
Well, again, I think it was special ed. I mean,
so he taught them everything.
He taught them everything because nobody else wanted him in the class. So I guess he was a jack of all trades when it came to teaching, which in the high school setting, even in the 80s, because I was there, that is not how it worked. We did not have a jack of all trades in the high school setting. You still went to your core classes. So the premise of him being able to teach everything, a little bit off point there.
Yeah, and again, going back to the trips, the first episode, like you're saying, they drive out to the desert for some really unknown reason. And then when the bus stops working, or van, whatever it actually was.
Minibus.
Yeah. Ralph just leaves the kids and walks off.
That's right. These delinquents, the troublemakers, the ones who are hard to control. Yeah, he just looks at one, says, hey, you're in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in charge, and he walks away to try to get gas station that he saw a mile back or so.
Yeah, and this is after we've already discovered that pretty much the, I guess you would say, leader of the group of kids, Tony, has revealed that he was carrying a knife.
Oh, yeah. Although Ralph did take the knife from him.
Ralph did take the knife from him, but
Yeah.
again, you have that. But again, I got to get into the whole relationship. So we've got this whole group of kids. As you said, throughout the season and the series, he has more and more of a relationship with them, but it appears to only be 4 of them.
Yeah, the rest of them kind of come and go in the background. You kind of don't know what's happening. Now, I want to back up a second and talk about how Ralph earned that respect with Tony. I don't know if you recall this part of it, but Ralph actually got into the boxing ring with Tony and sparred for 3 rounds. And after that, Tony kind of had a little respect. Hey, you'd come in here and do that? Just try to show me how tough you are? And I think that helped earn some of the respect, at least on Tony's part. Although Ralph said he'd never do it again, and I don't blame him. Lucky he survived the 3 rounds, I think. But something like that does help you earn respect. Show the kids that you're not above them. You don't want to be below them. Sometimes you just need to be on the same level. And I think in that setting, Ralph was trying to show that he could be on the same level.
Well, we'll get into a little bit more about his relationship with these students. I'm also going to talk about the students a little bit later, but we mentioned about how some of the students just kind of disappear.
Yeah.
So does his son.
Yeah, after that first episode when they had the custody battle, where did he go? They never really just said that his wife got custody or he got custody.
And he appears in like 1 or 2 other episodes in season 1. So Ralph has a son named Kevin. When the show starts, you end up finding out that Ralph and his wife are divorced, and they are in the very first episode. It's all about he's trying to make a custody hearing. And of course, now becoming a superhero causes problems with that. But his son Kevin just completely disappears. I think he's not even mentioned but like once or twice in the whole rest of the series.
Yeah, I mean, definitely by the season 2 premiere, he was no longer in the picture at all.
All right, our next main character is Ralph's FBI partner, Agent Bill Maxwell, played by Robert Culp.
Yeah, Ralph... I don't know how the 2 of them would have ended up in any other grouping had it not been for the aliens putting them together. And Bill, again, right off the bat, when you're watching this pilot episode, you think he is just an on his way out the door alcoholic FBI agent who has no reason being in the bureau. I mean, it's just like, why are you even still here?
Yeah, but then his character develops to where he's kind of the straight-laced, does everything by the book, wants everything done exactly the way it should be done. He doesn't like to deviate.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's like, again, going back to that first episode, where everything is established. Ralph takes his group into this little diner, and Bill is there trying to have his lunch, and Tony starts to talk smack with Bill, the FBI agent. Tony pulls a knife, and Bill pulls a gun.
Yeah, he pulls a gun on a teenager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, wow, we're starting this show off on the right foot for sure.
I'm going to get into this a little bit more, talking about ages. Of course, Robert Culp was the oldest of the entire cast by a good 20 to 30 years. Robert Culp, as many may actually know, was Bill Cosby's partner on the show I Spy back in the 60s.
Okay. Did not know that.
You didn't watch I Spy?
No, I don't remember that one.
Oh, yeah. Then they made it into a movie with Owen Wilson and Eddie Murphy.
Now, that one I remember.
Yeah. But no, the original I Spy was Bill Cosby and Robert Culp.
Okay.
He also, this is going to be another kind of obscure movie reference, but I am actually, from the 1980s, I was actually a fan of a movie called Turk 182.
Now you got me on that one.
Okay, yeah, like I said, it's random, but it was something I was interested in. He actually plays the mayor in Turk 182.
Okay.
So that was another one. But he's in a lot of stuff. Like I said, he's old school FBI agent, very cowboy-esque, that kind of, gritty law enforcement agent that was very predominant in the 1980s. But we talk about his character, and again, I'll talk about more about them remaking the show. His character could not exist today.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, almost every scene he was making some reference to the commies, the Russians, the Pinkos. There was something negative to say about almost every enemy that the U.S. had at that time. I mean,
but it wasn't even that. It's the way he talks to Pam, and the way he talks about the kids. Like,
that's true. That's true. He was kind of I don't know. You think they were trying to do that to be funny, or was it just a sign of the times that we were living in?
Well, see, now again, you talk about signs of the times. I mean, I was a toddler.
Yeah, but I was there. I don't remember anyone ever talking to us the way he talked to those kids. And we knew of the Cold War. We knew the Ruskies and the commies and everything, but we never talked about them the way that he talked about them. So,
well, like I said, it got me the fact that he never calls Pam by her name. If she's just the girl that's there, he called her the skirt.
Right.
And if she was there to help them, he my mind just went blank. He referred to her as the attorney. What did he call her?
Well, she was a lawyer.
Yeah, she was a lawyer, but what did he? Counselor. He called her counselor.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I mean, he never calls her by name. Ever.
I don't think I picked up on that.
Again, if it ever happened, it was so rare. I have never caught him calling her Pam.
But thinking about it, and I did go back and watch a few of the episodes to brush up for our recording here. I didn't pick up on the fact, but now that you mention it, yeah, it was always the skirt or counselor. I don't recall him saying her name. You're right.
Yeah, and I mean the show does in a lot of episodes. They do try to make us kind of really care about Bill and cause some sort of sympathy for Bill, but then he throws out some derogatory statement about something, and okay,
and you're right back to where you were.
Yeah, I did find this a really interesting characteristic of Bill that I don't think they ever actually explain. Why does he enjoy eating dog biscuits?
Yeah, I mean, what is up with that? You're right. I noticed that as well. He's always carrying around a box of milk bones.
Yeah,
and
he knows he's eating dog biscuits. It's not like he just grabs a box out of the pantry and
it's like, oh wait, I grabbed the wrong thing. No, he is actually carrying around the milk bones.
Yeah.
And now, do you think he actually liked milk bones?
He does. I mean, there was even an episode where when Pam arrives, he even asked her. He said, "Did you get the biscuits?" And she hands him the box of the dog biscuits, and he opens them up and starts eating. It's a random little characteristic that I really wish they would have, at least in maybe the first episode, that you see him eat it. And I don't remember this, but to explain, like, why is he doing it?
Elaborate just a little bit. Let us know, what is the deal with him and the milk bones? Yeah.
Because even there was an episode with where they have to save a wild horse. And there's the reference to the fact that the horses are getting kidnapped, in essence. They're getting stolen, and they're being sold to the dog food companies. And Bill is sitting there eating dog food when they say that. And I know he just makes some reference to, well, dogs got to eat as well, and eats another dog biscuit. I don't get it, but
so weird.
Yeah, let's go ahead and move on to Pam. Pam Davidson, played by Connie Selica, Mrs. John Tesh, for those of you who are in the knowledge there.
Right.
She actually followed this show with a show I had never heard of called Hotel, which starred James Brolin, and then she played like one of the female leads. That show actually ran for 5 years.
Oh yeah, I remember.
So it ran from 84 to 89 or something like that?
Something like that. I remember Hotel coming on. I think it competed with Dallas.
Oh, okay.
I think that was they were kind of running those same time slots around in that time. It was supposed to be one of those drama shows that kind of
Knots Landing and
Fantasy
Dynasty.
Island. Yeah, all of those things that got kind of the same audience where you're just watching the people come and go. Or maybe the Love Boat would have been a better one, because you come onto the boat, you go off the boat, you come into the hotel, you go out of the hotel. So everything just revolved about the characters while they were there.
Well, Connie Selica, this was at the end, really, of Robert Culp's celebrity. He was on his way kind of on the downslide. William Catt, actually, this is really the only thing he ever really did. He appeared, like I said, he did the Perry Mason thing, but in terms of starring in things and whatnot, he kind of just appeared in like episodes or two of things.
Right, this was it.
But for Connie Selica, this was kind of the beginning. Although she hasn't been active, as I looked it up, she hasn't been active since 2012.
Okay.
And even before that, she has only done 5 things since the 2000s started. So she's kind of faded out. I I was kind of interested to see what else she did. Even without knowing, because obviously as a kid, I didn't know who Connie Selica was. But I remember as I got older, like, I would recognize the name Connie Selica. Yeah. And I don't know if it's because she was John Tesh's wife or what it was, but I knew the name Connie Selica.
Yeah, again, the character itself, when you meet her, it's just Ralph's lawyer. And then a few minutes into the episodes, you realize, hey, there's something else going on there. It's not just a lawyer, even though she's handling the case. So,
yeah, which seems to me like a problem.
Yeah.
If you're attorney, if you're having an affair, well, I guess you wouldn't call it an affair, but if you're in a relationship with the attorney that's handling your divorce and or custody hearing,
right?
Because we don't actually know whether she was the divorce attorney. We just know that she's the attorney handling the custody.
The custody case, yes, that's true.
Yeah,
so
this
could have been a few years down the road. You just don't know the timeline there of how they actually got together.
No, the first episode really makes you feel like that's when they're first telling each other that they really do have feelings for each other. And then your episode 4, he's meeting her parents. Okay. So it's like, okay, well, that's a quick relationship.
Very fast. But hey, things moved fast in the 80s. You got to keep up.
Were you aware of the fact that Connie Selica was pregnant for the beginning of the show?
No, they hid that very well.
Yeah, so she got cast and then found out she was pregnant. And she went to Stephen J. Cannell, the creator of the show, and said, hey, just wanted to let you know I found out I'm pregnant. I totally understand if you need to recast. Of course, he didn't. He thought he casted the right person. And so as she started to, get her baby bump and all that, they did find ways to cover it in the way television does. So if you go back and watch these, you'll notice that Pam is almost always like holding something.
Oh, yeah.
Like she's got like a coat draped on her arm, or she's holding a box, or as she talks about, I actually watched a little interview in a special feature. She talked about that when she really got too big for them to cover that up, it was just a lot of shots of her on the phone, where it was, from chest up, which you then see as it gets towards the end of season 1, but really I think it more happens in season 2. She just flat out disappears.
Yeah, she was out of a bunch of episodes, and I'm like, did they write her off the show already? But
no, because she had a kid.
There you go. That explains it.
Then she comes back, and I got to be honest with you. I think the show was better when it was all 3 of them, when Pam is included in the mission.
And speaking of all 3 of them being involved, I like in that very first episode the reference to Superman. I don't know if you were planning on bringing this up or not.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had it in my notes for the moving panels portion.
But again, Ralph's kid is watching Super Friends at the beginning of the episode there, and the reference at the end where he's telling Pam, when she sees him in the suit, and made the comment something to the effect that, hey, at least you found out my superpowers when Superman kept it hidden from Lois Lane all those years as Clark Kent. So my secret identity kind of reference there.
But moving on with the characters, I do want to hit on those students a little bit, because the students are kind of the major secondary characters in a lot of these episodes, at least for season 1 and 2. And then in season 3, they just disappear. There's almost even no mention that Ralph is a teacher in season 3.
And if you didn't know he was a teacher, or remember that he was in the first 2 seasons, you probably wouldn't know that he was in the 3rd season at all.
But at least in the first 2 seasons, you get the episodes with the students. You get an episode that happens at the school.
Right.
Season 3, nothing.
Almost all gone.
So we've got Tony, that was played by Michael Perry. We got Rhonda, played by Faye Grant. Kyler, played by Jesse Goins. And Paco, played by Don Cervantes. Now, here's what I found interesting about those kids. Tony, Michael Perry, is only 3 years younger than Connie Selica.
Okay.
Rhonda, Faye Grant, is only 2 years younger than Connie Selica.
Okay.
And I couldn't find ages on the other 2. So you're looking at
a cast that is almost the same age.
Yeah, and I mean, even William Catt was only 6 or 7 years older than them. So yeah, you're looking at a cast that's all in their 20s, even though it's supposed to be teacher, his girlfriend, and some teenagers. Right. And then you've got Bill, who is actually in his 50s, early 50s, maybe late 40s at the time of the show. And I just found that kind of interesting.
It is. It's very interesting indeed. And again, you go back into that that first few episodes where Rhonda is kind of got this thing for her teacher, Ralph.
Yeah, that was that was creepy.
Yeah.
I mean, she kisses him a couple of times. I mean, on the cheek.
Right. I did notice that. But yeah, all of a sudden, here he is. You got the teacher-student relationship kind of crossing some lines there a little bit.
Yeah, well, now, albeit Ralph never crosses the line.
No, he
but
didn't.
Ralph also never... I think there's one time he actually talks to her and says, look, I think you might be getting the wrong impression. But then he doesn't seem to ever back away from her wanting to hug him.
Right.
Or, like I said, kiss his cheek or anything like that. It's weird. And then what's the thing about season 2? They all of a sudden become a band.
You know, they had the talent. They had the skills. They just wanted to put their show on the road and show everybody what they had. What was the episode? I'm sure you'll talk about it. Classical Gas, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they actually had some stock footage of Woodstock as they were playing that outdoor concert. That was pretty interesting.
The song that only had like two lines of lyrics that she just repeated over and over again.
That's all you need, man. It's a hit song in the 80s. 2 lines.
I think the only other character is worth mentioning is that of Bill's boss that shows up in season 2, Carlisle.
Carlisle, yeah.
Carlisle, played by William Bogart. He was also very famously, for me as a kid, he was the neighbor on the television show Small Wonders.
Okay.
Remember Small Wonders?
I remember Small Wonders. Wasn't that about the robot kid?
Yep.
Okay.
About the guy who creates his own
daughter. Builds his own daughter, yeah.
Yeah, has a son, but builds his own daughter.
Right.
Probably more recently, people would know him. You probably won't, Reese, but a lot of our listeners might actually know him as Kent Wallace or the announcer from Chappelle's Show.
Yeah, no clue there.
Unfortunately, he did pass away last year. Robert Culp is actually still alive, but William Bogart did pass away in 2020, and I actually saw one of the last things he was in. Again, another kind of unknown movie, but it was I'm a huge fan of. It was called Ode to Joy. He has just a small little part as like a librarian or a clerk or something.
Okay.
But that was one of the last things he did. But that's really it. Those are your main characters. I do want to point out some cameos, though, before we get into the moving panels portion.
All right.
So first off, did you recognize Pam's mom?
You're talking about June Lockhart?
Yep, June Lockhart.
Yeah. There you go.
And what would people know June Lockhart from?
Well, I mean...
Because I connect her with 2 things. So what do you connect her to?
Let's see. Was she in Gunsmoke?
Ooh, that I don't know. I connect her with Lost in Space.
Okay.
Because she was Mrs. Robinson in Lost in Space.
Okay. Did not remember that.
She was also Timmy's mom on Lassie.
Okay. There you go.
Like the old black and white Lassie television show.
Yeah.
There's a lot of these in season 3. In season 3, there's an episode where Ralph is having to help I forgot the name of the episode, but he's having to help this kid who has cracked the government missile defense and whatnot. And there's actually an appearance by William Zabka from Karate Kid. He actually plays a nerd in the episode. Again, it's one of those you almost have to be looking because he's only in it for a few seconds.
Yeah.
But then there's also an episode where a very young Bob Saget plays a college student.
I do remember that one. That was Wizards and Warlocks. It's kind of like a Dungeons and Dragons episode. Yeah, it was kind of weird. It was out there.
Yeah, that was an interesting episode. And then probably my favorite cameo is Andre the Giant.
WWE star right there, being the monster human creation that he was.
Yeah, he's supposed to be like some sort of genetically created monster.
He's just Andre.
Of course, he's just
huge.
Andre the Giant. But that was just great, And this was before Princess Bride, and you could also tell it was before Andre was really suffering from his body kind of breaking down because he does move quite well in that episode.
He did. I was very surprised at how well he was getting around.
But yeah, great cameo. This is again classic 80s. You gotta love it. Great characters, and I just enjoy the show so much.
There you go.
All right, so let's get into the moving panels, which is going to be impossible for us because, like I said, this is not based on a comic book. So I can't really connect things that happen in the show with things that are from any type of source material. As Reese said, probably the only comic book connection is Ralph's son, Kevin, watching the Super Friends in the first episode, which, when you brought that up, I wanted to still bring it up here because that scene is funny because ABC was actually sued by Warner Brothers for the character of Ralph Hinckley being the greatest American hero.
That.
Yeah,
so wasn't that suit eventually dropped?
Well, it wasn't
or
dropped.
Did they settle?
So
I don't
much.
remember what happened, but I do remember that suit.
So the lawsuit all dealt with the fact that Warner Brothers, who owns DC, actually felt that this show infringed on Superman, that Ralph's character was too similar to Superman.
Did Batman actually say this in Super Friends, or did they make Batman say this or appear to say this in Super Friends, where Batman says the line, "All we need is another super friend who can fly"? I don't recall Batman ever saying that, but he certainly said it on that episode they were watching for season 1, episode 1.
Yeah, I know that them showing the Super Friends was kind of a nod to, hey, here's what Ralph is about to become. But no, the court actually ruled in favor of the greatest American hero. And the reason why was because they said the fact that Ralph kind of bumbles around, his look, I mean, the suit's entirely red. Yep. It's not blue. He has this curly blonde hair. The way he looked, the way he acted, and all of that, yeah, it did not infringe on the character.
Clearly not an infringement, because even into season 3, Ralph still had not figured out how to fly. He just looked so out of control.
Well, he gets better with flying.
I mean, you've had the suit for 3 years, man. Come on, figure out how to fly.
You know, that's another thing. I don't want to get too deep into this, but it's very confusing how much time passes from the first episode in, because I know there's one episode where they talk about how it's been 6 months, and I'm going, 6 months?
6
like
months, you still fly like you're hanging off a wet noodle rack or something? I don't know.
I don't know either. But getting into the suit, let's talk about the suit. So the famous symbol on his chest, which no one has any idea what it stands for. There's never any reference to what it means or anything. So here's the story. So according to Stephen J. Cannell, who created the show, he was talking with the costume designer, and the costume designer says, okay, we need a logo for the chest. What's the logo going to be? And Cannell didn't have any idea. And so, according to Cannell, the designer looked down, picked up a pair of scissors that had square handles, held them upside down, and said, this is your logo.
And there you have it.
And so I can kind of see that, where it kind of looks like a pair of scissors, just with a really big handle, I guess you would say. To me, it more looks like a stake going through a book. But
true.
But I don't know. What I did find interesting was they wanted to make sure it was symmetrical.
Right.
And the reason being, actually connecting back to Superman, the reason being is because with the way that they would reuse footage, which this show reuses footage.
It was almost overkill.
But the way that television shows reuse footage, they knew that one way that they would kind of get around with making it look different would be to flip it. And they had done the same thing back in the 50s and 60s with George Reeves in The Adventures of Superman. The problem is that when you flip Superman, the S is backwards.
Clearly tell they've done something funny there.
Yeah, so you go back and rewatch some of those shows, you can clearly see that he has a backwards S. The thing about Ralph's logo being symmetrical is that when you flip it still looks exactly the same.
Flipped.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. I also found it interesting he's never given a superhero name. He has no identity.
I'm Ralph.
He's just Ralph Hinckley.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about his powers. So we've already mentioned about his ability to fly, which is the very first thing that he learns to do, even though he's never great at it and he never figures out how to land.
Did he actually learn how to fly? I mean, let's go back. The little boy had to tell him that he's got to take 3 steps and then jump.
Yeah.
So he's got other people telling him how to work the suit. It's so funny.
Then probably the next power that you see him use the most is his holographic visions.
I did like the holographic visions, the kind of blob on the wall, so to speak.
Yeah. So what happens there is that if he finds something that someone owned or something that someone was in possession of, as they called him on the show, he could pick up vibes, and then he could see where they were. And I mean, it got very specific. Like, he could tell you exactly the address and everything about where they were.
Did you have a favorite vibe on the show? Because I can clearly remember my favorite vibe. At the beginning of season 2, when he's joining the baseball team, he vibed on a hot dog.
Oh, I don't remember that.
You don't remember that one? The kidnappers had taken the owner of the team so that Ralph would not be put into the game to win the game, as they were trying to. I guess you'll talk about this later as well. But yeah, one of the bad guys was eating a hot dog and threw it down on the ground outside of the owner's box. And when Ralph went up there, picked up the hot dog, vibed off the hot dog, gave it to Bill, and later on in the episode, Bill is eating that hot dog. It's kind of weird.
I didn't remember
it's
that.
kind of weird.
I remember the episode, but I didn't remember that.
Yeah.
I do find it funny that there are times where Ralph just has to hold the item.
Right.
But then for some reason, if it's ever any type of clothing, he actually has to put it on.
Put the hat on, put the shirt on.
Well, there was even an episode, I can't remember which episode, but there's an episode where he actually puts on, it was the one with, you talk about the baseball one. This one was the football episode. And the football player's wife or girlfriend has been kidnapped. And he goes to the house and he sneaks into the room. The maid is there,
right?
The housekeeper. And Bill distracts her while he goes into the bedroom. And he finds like her negligee or something. And he actually puts it on. And he's sitting there. He's sitting like on the bed, like kind of rubbing while he's wearing it.
I do not remember that one at all.
Yeah. And the housekeeper comes in and goes, "What are you doing?" What I also remember is there's only one episode that they do this in. It was very close to the end where he has a holographic vision and he touches Pam's shoulder.
I remember that.
So that Pam can see it as well.
Right.
And I don't know why they never did that more, like with him showing Bill what he was seeing or something.
I think they did do that in one other episode. Laramie?
Well, no, they did it with the with him having the premonition, not the vision, but when he had when he was seeing the future.
Yep, that was another power that he had. But he touched Bill, and Bill could see it as well, the future. I don't remember which episode that was, but it was a good one.
Yeah, no, that was a good one. I think it was called Now You See It.
That's
the name of that episode.
That's right, it was.
Yeah. That was the one with where he sees the plane crash.
And Pam is on the plane, so that...
Yeah, which he doesn't know when he first sees it.
Right.
He finds that out later. And of course, he's got he's got super strength, he's got super speed, which I always love. They make the sound of a train when he runs.
True.
With his super speed.
And in some episodes, if you look back and they show his footprints and they're smoking. Do you remember seeing that every once in a while? Yeah.
And of course, they clearly use the just speed up the film sometimes when he's like running down the street.
Oh yeah, that was always fun.
He had super breath, which he used a few times. Of course, he had the invulnerability where he couldn't be shot or crushed or anything. Although I found it interesting, is it just the suit that's bulletproof? Because you notice how whenever he was shot at, he always put his arms up.
Always.
In front of his face.
Even though he knew the suit could protect him. Yeah, maybe he was protecting his face. I don't know.
I don't know if so that way, because it was long sleeve.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was so that the suit was blocking his face. I was kind of interested by that. Okay. Then we've got the power that he learns very early on and uses, but then uses it sparingly. I think he should have used it more, and that was his invisibility.
True. He had a good invisibility one. What was the episode again? Where he Bill was named Person of the Year.
Oh yeah, that was you're talking about the last episode.
Is that it? That was the last one?
Yeah, the one where the like Mexican country.
Right, and he goes down there and he's
not Mexican country.
Somewhere in Latin America.
Yeah. Vanity Says the Preacher.
Yeah,
that's the name of the episode.
That's right. So yeah, he was going in and out of the rooms listening in on what everybody was saying so he could figure out what was really going on.
So yeah, let me talk about
Fly on the wall.
So when he's invisible, can things pass through him?
I don't think so. And the reason I say that they don't pass through him is because he actually had to open the door to go into the room.
Well, I get that, but a lot of times when he opens that door, there's not enough room for him to have gotten into the room.
True.
So they didn't really think that. And then there's also an episode, and I can't remember the name of this one, but there's, yes, I'm about to say words that I'm about to say. There's the episode where ninjas steal a laser gun, and when they fire the laser, Ralph turns invisible, and it looks like the laser just passes through him, and then he reappears in the exact same spot.
So maybe it does, which would then beg the question, why does he have to open the door if he can pass through things?
Which, again, we'll talk about the pass-through things, because there's one episode I really want to talk about.
I think I know which one you're...
And I think you already know where he walks through a wall.
Not only does he walk through a wall, but he pulls Bill through the wall with him.
Yes.
So that's
But let's get back to his powers.
Yes. Sorry, we digress.
Let's get back to his... No, you're fine. Again, I love this show, and there's a lot I could just talk about with this show, but we don't want to make everybody listen to a 4-hour show. So next up, telekinesis, which he uses maybe a couple of times.
Right.
Part of me wondered, we mentioned the Wizards and Warlock episode. Part of me wondered, was he using the telekinesis to control the video game?
Now, there's a thought, because he definitely whipped through that game faster and got farther than anyone else. So it's possible.
Not just that. He causes that guy, when they're wanting to talk to him, he causes that guy to actually lose the game.
That's true. That's true. So obviously something going on there.
He also, I honestly think they only use this in one episode. He has pyrokinesis, where he was able to start fires, and he accidentally sets Bill's car on fire. So they have that. There was, of course, the one episode. It was actually the season 2 premiere episode where he learns how to shrink.
That's right. I remember that one now, because they got pulled up to the mothership. The aliens actually came back and pulled him and Bill up to the mothership, gave him another copy of the handbook, the instructions, and then he used it to shrink. And then when he enlarged himself, left the book behind again. So now you've not got an instruction manual. Yeah,
which as much as you want to blame Ralph for that, you almost go, that really just kind of seems like a flaw in the instruction book, where you have to be holding on to it to do this stuff.
Make it grow back.
Because that was a weird thing. It gave you the impression that he's having to punch in like a code in the instruction book in order to do something. And it was really weird.
Maybe it's only to do certain things, but still, as you grow, so should your books.
Then, of course, we've got in an episode where he has the ability to mind control people, although it's only for a temporary amount of time. Right. Ralph is exposed to some radiation, and then all of a sudden, if he tells someone to do something, they do it, which actually leads to a pretty funny little moment between he and Pam, because he gets Pam to make him a sandwich while they're just having a conversation. And, of course, she starts to realize what he's doing. Because once they've done it, they snap back, I thought that was kind of a funny thing.
What about his teleportation?
When did he teleport? Why do I not remember that?
There was one episode where he's in one car and he blinks out of it and then blinks over to another location.
Oh, see, I was just under the assumption that was him turning invisible and then flying over or running over to another place.
Yeah, I want to say that
was impression.
What was the episode that had Andre the Giant in it? I want to say that he was able to teleport, but you say, maybe he was just turning invisible and getting there faster, flying or whatever.
But that was the thing about his powers, though. It was whatever superpower was needed for that episode, he had it. It was just like the episode where it's one of, I think, a lot of people remember, and I know Connie Selica said in that interview I watched, it's her favorite episode, but The Shock Will Kill You.
Oh, yeah.
Where they meet the alien, and then Ralph becomes magnetized.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it was funny because as he walked around, you could see the little sparks shooting off of him. And it was, especially at the beginning when that was where he landed the space shuttle.
Yes.
Yeah, you could see the sparks coming off of him. That was kind of interesting.
And then that last episode that you mentioned earlier, this one was weird because it's like he knew how to do it the whole time. When he magnifies his voice.
Oh, yeah. So everybody could hear?
Yeah, he goes, they're not all going to be able to hear you. And he just kind of grabs his throat for a minute and he goes, now they will. And then he can talk like he's talking into a microphone. I'm going, wait, when have you ever done that before?
It's just what he needed at the time.
Yeah. So, but what were you going to say? You were going to talk about something earlier.
Well, again, I was thinking with he just blinks out and blinks back in. I want to say it reminded me of teleportation.
Yeah, no, I remember exactly what you're talking about, but I guess
Here's what I was going to say about his flying ability. It always seemed like he was flying somewhere so he could get there faster, and as soon as he landed into something, Bill and Pam would just roll up in the car, and I'm like, why didn't you just take the car, dude? You didn't have to worry about wrecking into anything when you landed.
Yeah.
But maybe Bill is just that good of a driver.
Yeah, I'll get I want to get into more of that a little bit later too, because I do have a list of things I don't like about the show, and that actually falls into that. So we'll get into that a little bit more. But I want to hit kind of ending talking about his powers, and one I've already alluded to. I want to talk about an episode, and this also goes into things I don't like. I want to talk about what was probably my least favorite episode, but it's an episode that is a good bad, if you ask me, and that's The Beast in the Black.
Oh, yeah. I remember that one.
Beast in the Black, which is in season 2, I believe. Ralph is able to detect the supernatural somehow. He can sense that there's a ghost.
Something going on behind that brick wall for sure.
Yeah. And yeah, we have where there's a brick wall that Ralph somehow is able to walk through, and then it takes him through a supernatural dimension where there's some beast that we only see like the teeth of.
And the color variations. It was all black, but when the beast growled or bit Ralph, you saw blue and red teeth. I mean, it was just the weirdest color combinations. And wasn't it explained that beast was the guardian to the fourth dimension or something?
Yeah, that, prevented him from passing through, and so he gets beat by it the first time, but then he has to face it the second time and gets through so that he can rescue Bill, who has been possessed by the ghost. Because that was the other thing about this episode. Bill dies in that episode.
The chandelier fell square on his head.
And so how they explain that, I get that a ghost possessed him, but how they explain how he's able to come back from the dead didn't really make a lot of sense.
Again, I'm thinking that when Ralph took Bill through the portal into the fourth dimension, that somehow the inheriting ghost was able to get out of Bill's body and Bill's spirit got back in. That's the only explanation that you got.
Yeah, I don't know. I do want to talk about one other episode, and then we're going to get into something. I want to ask you a question about episodes. In season 2, there's an episode called Don't Mess Around with Jim. And it's in that episode that we actually find out that Ralph and Bill are not the first pair of partner and superhero.
That is so true. You had a good old Jim, and what was his partner's name?
I can't remember his partner's name either.
I want to say it started with an M, something like Murphy.
Yeah,
Murphy,
I did too.
Monroe.
Murphy or Monroe popped into my head as well. Maybe even
it was
Madison,
one of those M names. But anyway, yeah, they were a team prior to. And Jim, in that episode, actually had to fake his own death so that his will would not be sold to the wrong people and used in a bad way. Tell us about good old Jim there.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about that episode is to find out that Jim originally had the suit, which they also kind of implied that the suit looked a little different when he had it, but it was the same idea. He had the instruction book because they actually teach Ralph how to use one of his abilities, and the telekinesis actually. But you end up finding out Jim actually tells Ralph that it's probably for the better that he lost the instruction, because you end up finding out that Jim got so power hungry from having the suit that he essentially became a super villain.
He used it to create an empire and made lots and lots of money.
Made himself rich, yeah. And so the aliens took the suit from him. The other interesting thing about the episode is the way it ends, where Jim is about to die and the aliens show back up and they take Jim and his partner. And so then it makes Ralph and Bill think, wait, is this how this ends? Is that whenever we're no longer going to be the superhero team, that we're going to spend the rest of our life on an alien ship?
That's what it implies, but as you get to the end of the season and the end of the series, you realize that's not what happens.
All right. So there are 44 episodes. I don't want to talk about every single one because it's going to be long enough as it is. But I want to ask you, what was your favorite episode?
Oh, wow. Okay. You kind of hit the nail on the head there. There were really good ones, but I think for me, my favorite one had to be the 200-mile-an-hour fastball.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big baseball fan, and it's every kid's dream to be able to play professional baseball. So that was kind of like living out a dream for me as well, to see Ralph, who had always wanted to play baseball, kind of make it. Plus, it had this one starred, I don't know if you recall, this was starred Marky Post, who went on to star in another one of my favorite television comedies, Night Court. Yep.
Yeah. And this was a young Marky Post.
Oh, very young. What was yours?
If you take the first episode out, because I think the first episode is great. Like you talked about earlier, I love how it establishes the characters. It establishes the relationships. I love how at the end when Pam is finding everything out, the way Pam reacts to it and has to deal with it. I think it's a great start to this show. But of all of them, I actually like the episode Dreams. And Dreams is the one where Ralph is trying to help a whole bunch of people at the same time.
Was he trying to help everybody or just one person that kind of spiraled out of control? Because I know which one you're talking about.
No, he's trying to help because you've got the teachers. He's trying to help the one teacher who demanded that she be named assistant principal and then she got fired. He's trying to help the other teacher who believes he has cracked the code on poker and goes to the sketchy poker game and he's being cheated. Right.
I remember the CC cameras in the air vents.
And then you've got the coach that is trying to get recruited. He's trying to get a job with a university, but he's wanting to change his plays and do something different. And Ralph's trying to help him. And then you've got the overarching story, which is where a criminal from a previous episode gets released and he's trying to out Ralph as this flying superhero.
And, do I dare make a reference here, trying to kill Bill.
Funny.
Sorry. Had to go there. But no, the reason I asked the question is because didn't the whole thing start because Ralph actually broke into a game manufacturer and put a board game created by the janitor on the desk of the head honcho and implied that the boss wanted the people to look at this to try to produce it. And then it got picked up and that's when everybody else started having their dreams. I mean, maybe that's what started it all.
Yeah, I could see that. I think, I didn't look at it as kind of a catalyst of what caused the other ones to have their dreams of doing what they wanted to do. I looked at it as Ralph did this one thing for this janitor to kind of hopefully help him. He didn't do anything to actually, he just nudged. He set the game on the boss's desk so that he would look at it. And he just wanted to do those little things for other people. I just like the episode because it's truly showing what a good person who has superpowers, the stress that they would go through trying to help everybody.
And I imagine it's unbelievable. Because, again, at the end of the episode, Ralph was exhausted. And that's just what he said. I'm exhausted. I can't do it anymore. Or at least he couldn't do it anymore for that episode.
Yeah, because, me being a Superman fan, there's a lot of the Superman stories that talk about how Superman, can hear everything. Like, at all times. He can hear everything
got to be overwhelming.
And he has to choose when to help. And so that's why I like Dream so much.
Definitely a good episode.
All right, so let's talk about things that me personally I did not like about the show. I've already talked about the flying effects.
Oh.
And I do mean the effects. I'm not necessarily talking about his ability to fly. I'm talking about the actual effect.
The sound they make, just the movement of Ralph as he's flying, those things.
The overuse of the footage.
It was cringeworthy for sure.
It's the same shots of him flying over and over again. It's the same shots of him crashing. Even if he's in the middle of downtown Los Angeles, he somehow finds a way to crash into the desert.
That one bush in the desert, yes. That's his landing pad, I guess.
Yeah, and then there were the episodes where it's whoever was in charge of the special effects, the proportion of Ralph to the scene, the perspective that you have.
Okay.
It's like Ralph was not the right size. The one that was the worst, and again, I get this was early 1980s, special effects weren't great.
And they were probably just playing around with everything, trying to figure it out.
But there is an episode where Ralph has to stop a rocket from launching. And he flies down. He's pushing down on the rocket, which when they show as a close-up, it's clearly a flipped shot where he's actually standing up and putting his hands on this, prop rocket. But then when they show the full shot, it's the shot of a rocket, and then there's the little cutout, Ralph,
tiny Ralph
at the top of it. Well, one, obviously you can tell it's a cutout because sometimes he doesn't line up with the top of the rocket, but two, the proportion of Ralph. You're going, Ralph is way too big for this rocket right now.
Right.
So, yeah, there was just some of that. There was the obvious with the stuntman, when you that's clearly a guy in a wig.
Right. I do remember those episodes.
Even when the show continued, William Cat, or Ralph, whatever you want to say, his hair gets shorter, but because they reuse footage, when he's flying, he's got a thicker head of hair.
Well, again, in the 80s, we tended to look over a lot of things like that. We were just excited to have a new show on, and here's a guy who can fly and has these powers that we all wish we had. So, yeah, we tended to overlook some of those flaws, but you're right. As I went back and watched some of these episodes the past few days, man, it's like, how did we put up with that? Knowing what we know now, it just would not fly. Literally, would not fly.
Yeah. Continuing talking about his powers, I didn't get the fact that he had to reveal the suit in order to use the powers. What I'm talking about? He had to unbutton his shirt in order to have one of his visions. Right. Or you talked about the baseball episode. He had to. In the baseball episode, he had to pull the sleeve down so that the red sleeve was coming out of the baseball jersey so that he could throw really fast. Does it not work if it's covered up?
It's not.
I mean, I didn't get that. But my other thing, which I've kind of talked about earlier with his students, but I also want to hit up on that baseball episode, that 200-mile-per-hour fastball, is Ralph's ethics. Ralph is clearly picked because he's supposed to be this pure, innocent, nice guy.
He's the good guy.
But yet we have, we've already talked about, he and Rhonda have this odd relationship, teacher-student relationship. He's very buddy-buddy with, Tony and some of the other students. The fact that he takes those 4 students to the Virgin Islands in a couple of episodes.
I mean, hey, you take your favorites with you wherever you go, right?
I don't know about that. But and then that was weird too. I just want to point this out. Right. So there were 2 episodes that take place in the Virgin Islands. But at the end of the first episode, they go home. But then the very next episode, they're back in the Virgin Islands.
Well, somebody forgot their bathing suit for sure. They just had to go pick it up. That's all. Yeah, that kind of thing, the continuity of the episodes just sometimes didn't make sense.
And then we had, like I said, him making Pam make him a sandwich and clean and whatnot when he had mind control powers. But then going to the 200-mile-per-hour fastball episode, and then there was also a football episode. Yep. The fact that Ralph doesn't even consider the fact that, isn't he cheating?
It is a little bit cheating. I mean, if he's supposed to be this guy with a whole lot of integrity, that seems like it would take some of it away.
But it doesn't seem to bother him. Like you said with the baseball episode, he boasts and brags about the fact that I'm playing in the majors now, and he even thinks it's his own ability.
A little bit.
Even when Pam says it's the suit, he goes, well, I still have to be able to throw it through the strike zone. Suit makes me throw it faster, but I still have to have that ability.
That control.
I just had a few issues with Ralph's kind of ethics and the way they portray Ralph. He gets a little selfish.
Well, let's just say he would bend the rules a little bit.
Well, it's just like the aliens. I mean, the aliens, they're inconsistent. They don't get involved, but then all of a sudden in some episodes they show up and it's like they've known what's going on, but then they sometimes don't know what's going on, and they apparently aren't aware that he lost the instruction book. So it's like, what do these aliens, how knowledgeable are these aliens?
And you have to wonder, what is their true intent here? What is the real reason that they have the suit for somebody to wear?
Yeah. Well, which they try to explain in that last episode.
Yeah.
But they don't explain it very well.
It wasn't good enough for me.
No, that last episode was not a good final episode. I mean, you've got, and I hate that because the episode was written and directed by Robert Culp.
Yes. He wrote and directed 2 episodes, did he not?
Mm. I think he did. I don't remember what the other one was, though. But yeah, that last episode, it tries to be so much bigger, but it fails. I mean, it comes up short.
Yeah, it's like there was no closure anywhere to anything that was going on there, so I don't understand.
Yeah, and even when the aliens show back up towards the end of that episode, it's the same footage from when they showed up at the beginning of season 2. Yes. And they try to add Ralph in, but you can tell that Ralph's not actually there because it was only Bill in the original scenes that were shot.
Yeah, the green screen and stuff there. Again, the technology just wasn't quite up to snuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't. But my other, and this is the last thing I'll talk about, and then we can move on. How did people not know about Ralph? Because he does all of these things in front of people. When he flies, he usually just flies at like road level, like he's just flying behind a car.
Right.
And so it's like, and even with these criminals, and they're constantly saying, hey, I'd probably keep this between us or they're going to think you're crazy. And they even have the one time where the guys do tell, and then you see them getting dragged off in straitjackets.
Right.
But you would think that after a while, there's been so many reports of this flying guy in a red suit that somebody would start looking into it. And I know we do have that episode where the guy makes them think that he's working for the president, and they do actually know about Bill.
Right.
About Ralph. But I kind of was just like, how did not more people know about this guy?
I guess you would just have to write that one off to he was going so fast by them they didn't see him.
Yeah, but he wasn't. That was the thing.
Yeah.
Like you talked about when he flies, I mean, he's usually flying behind a car, and it takes him a minute to catch it.
Right. And I love how when he does catch it, he stops them all the exact same way.
Yeah, grabs which if they if they just
frame.
Rolled their window up,
they could have prevented him from stopping. That's true.
Yeah, because he always reaches into the car.
Grab the door frame through the window and turn them sideways. I mean, that was a classic Ralph move right there. So
yeah, it was a cool stunt though. For whatever the stunt actor was that was doing it, it was a cool stunt.
Yeah, but I think a lot more people did know about it that just didn't want to say anything, or I don't know how they kept that secret.
All right, well, and that's going to lead me into kind of the last few things I want to talk about. There was an attempt at a spinoff. It was called The Greatest American Heroine. And it came out in, I think it was 86. I apparently did not write the date down in my notes.
February 13th of 1986. Yep. There you
86. They filmed a pilot movie just like for the original show. Unfortunately, it was never picked up, and so the movie was never actually aired. They edited it down, which really hurts it. They edited it down so it could fit into the 1 hour time slot of just the show, and they added it in as just another show episode for the show in syndication. But the idea behind the show was exactly what we were just talking about. Ralph is actually now identified by the world. Everyone is aware of who Ralph Hinckley is and that he is this superhero.
Right, and everybody is trying to interview him and get him to sponsor products. Yeah, and it kind of goes to his head a little bit.
Goes to his head. He becomes celebrity, and the aliens, the little green guys, show back up. They tell Ralph, this is not the meaning of the suit, so you have to give it up. And they tell him to find someone else to give it up. Ralph, if you watch the episode as the edited down version, Ralph immediately finds someone.
Yeah, it didn't take him long.
There is no hunt whatsoever. He immediately finds someone. It is an elementary school teacher and foster mom, Holly Hathaway.
Yep.
Funny little tidbit here. When he reveals it to Bill that he has found a girl, Bill, of course, in his...
You're giving it to a skirt.
His nature, he talks about giving it to a skirt, even says you're pairing me up with Miss America.
Yep.
Which is a funny little tidbit because the actress who played Holly was actually Miss Arkansas from 1982.
Okay.
So, fun little thing there. And the actress, who I haven't mentioned yet, Mary Ellen Stewart, who played Holly, she was a dancer, which kind of explains how she, the way she moved when she was in the suit. She was also a soap opera star. She was on Guiding Light, As the World Turns. And what they do is they state, although you never actually see it happen, that as soon as he gives the suit to her, then everyone forgets that Ralph was a superhero, except for Ralph, Pam, and Bill.
Right.
And obviously
Holly. Right. Holly.
Yeah.
And maybe even Sarah, who is Holly's foster kid.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. She may not know that Ralph
gave her
the hero. But, I'm sure Holly tells her because that's what we pretty much see happen at the end of that episode.
Right.
But Bill was remaining as Holly's partner. That wasn't going to happen. But like I said, when they cut it, the episode just feels rushed. There is this story of them trying to stop like poachers,
right?
Whale poachers,
illegal whaling, yeah.
But we never see that get resolved. Like, we see her get the information.
And she goes up to, was it Maine or wherever they were doing that?
Yeah.
Newfoundland.
Yeah.
They went to Newfoundland to fight for the whales, and she did go into that sketchy bar and got the information and arm wrestled, and then that
in
was
a
it.
cringe-worthy moment, has her clothes ripped off to reveal the suit.
True.
Which I was kind of like, ugh, that never actually happened to Ralph. Ralph never got his clothes ripped off, but so I kind of had a uncomfortable moment with that, but it just felt rushed. I don't know if I've ever seen the full movie version.
I would hope that it adds something to the overall storyline because, again, like you say, it just felt like it was chopped together. Some kid was just, let's have fun with this and put these pieces together and see how it works, and it just did not work.
But if you do want to see it, The Greatest American Heroine, it is only, that I have found, is only available for free through Tubi. You have to look for it separate. It's not connected to The Greatest American Hero show. Or you can pay $1 to watch it on Amazon. That's really it.
Okay.
So, last thing before we get into our final decisions, did you know that they have tried to reboot this show twice?
I did not know that. But there's so much that they could do with it.
Yeah, and it's actually been fairly recently. So, in 2014... Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who are the guys behind the Lego Movie and a bunch of other television shows and movies, great little duo. They were actually wanting to reboot it for Fox, but that fell through. And then just recently, in 2017, ABC, who originally ran the show, they announced they were going to redo it. And they even announced it would be a female lead, and she would be an Indian American. It was then announced in 2018 that they had casted the character, and it was going to be Hannah Simone, who was from the show New Girl.
Okay.
And so, I mean, they made an announcement. They were ready to go. And then something, I don't know what happened, but they just didn't decide to do the show.
It's pulled the plug on it. But again, there's so many things that they could do to update the storylines and make it a better show. Certainly, the effects have come a long way since the 80s. It could have made this a very interesting and enjoyable show. I hope somebody does pick it up and redo it. I think that would be great.
I mean, I heard rumors before Stephen J. Cannell's passing that he was in talks with Disney, which, of course, ABC, that would all be the same company. But he was in talks of Disney of even doing like a Greatest American Hero movie. And I don't know. I'd like to see it happen.
I would.
I mean, I love the show. And like Reece said, with the stuff we can do now and making a comedic, superhero. I mean, shows about not famous superheroes, although they are based on comic books, but like The Boys, and then Amazon Prime just had a very successful animated one with Invincible.
Right.
They're not Superman and Batman or Iron Man or Captain America, but they still are very successful. I think they could pull it off with The Greatest American Hero.
Surely they could do it. And again, I think it would be a great comeback for probably one of the best 80s superhero. It's just classic. Yeah, that let's bring it back. Let's start the push.
Start a hashtag or something on social media. Hey, it worked for the Snyder Cut. Let's see if it'll work for us.
There you go.
All right, so let's reach our final decision. And we all know on this show, we call it Bag It, Stack It, or Trade It. And I will let you go ahead and go first. Reece, do you bag it, do you stack it, or do you trade it?
This one is going to be a stack it for me.
What?
I mean, again, it's so old and so dated with the graphics and the effects. I liked this show, but it's just not one that I'd want to put in my regular rotation. I'm sorry.
I don't know.
I'm sorry.
You're fine. You can have your opinion.
Thank you.
It's totally fine.
Thank you.
But, of course, I'm clearly going to say bag it. I mean, I wouldn't have even done this episode if I didn't love this show.
Oh, yeah.
It is 40 years old. I am 40 years old. I grew up with this show. I love this show. And I like that, yes, it had the episodes that were a little off the wall, like the ninjas with a laser gun.
There you go.
And the ghost and the electric eel alien. And oh my God, there was even an episode where Ralph believed there was like this Loch Ness Monster type creature, which you never see. But then at the very end of the episode, they do this stupid thing with like a toy. Yes, there were the goofy episodes.
They were so goofy.
But I also like that there were some in which it was just Ralph dealing with quote unquote real life conflicts.
True.
You know, stopping a kidnapping, stopping a bank robbery, doing things like that. And I enjoyed that. I think this show works. You can enjoy it as a kid because my daughter watched some of these with me. She enjoyed the few that she watched. She learned the theme song very quickly.
She probably will never forget it.
And again, I'm sitting there, I'm enjoying it as an adult. Now, I know it's part of the nostalgia because my wife, Bethany, watched some of them and she was like, I don't get it, you know, because she didn't grow up with it. So I get your side, but it's definitely a bag it for me. I absolutely love it. Again, hashtag bring back the greatest American hero.
We're starting that right now.
That's all I have to say. There we go. All right. Well, thank you, Reece, for joining me on this this walk through memory lane for me of the greatest American hero. I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Oh, yeah. So glad to be here with you and just relive some of those episodes was fantastic.
Yeah. Again, you want to watch it. It's free on Tubi. It's on Peacock. Now, Reece, did you say it's on the free version of Peacock?
It is.
Because I have a subscription.
It is on the free version of Peacock. All I did was download a Peacock, put in the information that was required. I did have to wade through some of their commercials, but other than that,
well, I mean, even me with a subscription, I still had to go through the commercials. So there. So at the time of this recording, you can watch it on Tubi, you can watch it on Peacock. You can find it on, I think, Amazon Prime if you want to pay for it and maybe not have to deal with the commercials. I actually own the entire series on DVD, so I can watch it anytime I want. But there you go. All right. Well, thank you, Reece.
You're quite welcome, Laramy. Glad to be here, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Absolutely. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. We're at Moving Panels. You can email us, movingpanels@gmail.com. And please keep this show going. We're almost a year in, and I am loving every moment of it and would love to keep the show growing. But for today, I want to thank Reece for joining me one more time. I want to thank everybody for listening. And for Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.